thank you to everyone for joining us with this webinar. We really appreciate everyone coming in, and we enjoy being able to, either help you with a bit of IT progression or create just a little bit of awareness and see if you could do it yourself, which is just why we're here. So anything we can do to assist is our goals. We've just been starting doing these webinars in the last this year and late last year. So it's something that we enjoy doing, and we've gotten really good feedback, mostly on the webinars, and we're always looking for things that we can do to topics that are going to appeal to our customers and others that are interested in learning more about, usually in the Office 365 suite. We had one last week, or earlier this week and last week, on security, and so we're always doing them. And please, in the feedback form at the end, feel free to suggest some topics that we could do. So just introducing us. So I'm Conan from the IT team, of course, and I'm the general manager, and I tend to be pretty broad. I'm a little bit technical. I've got a bit of a technical background, but nowadays I tend to work with new customers and see how we can help them. And we have Lucy.
Yep, so I'm Lucy. I work in sort of the service delivery space, so making sure that our techies have got what they need to do to sort of continue to perform for all of our customers and deliver a good level of service to you. I am not a techie, but I have put together all of the demos in this PowerPoint, so that's sort of a bit of an indicator of how easy Power Automate is to use. I am someone that loves process, and I love to get sort of dug in and trying out new things and making sure people don't have any excuse to not follow processes and things that we want them to. So focus on making people's day-to-day as easy as possible, which is where Power Automate has really gotten me interested for the last couple of years.
Thanks, Lucy. Yeah, we wouldn't have made much progress if we didn't have Lucy charging head on it, I don't think. So she's our sort of subject matter expert internally on what we should try and automate. And then we've got a few others that are starting to get into the groove of the kind of more heavier duty stuff in here. So we just kick in. Next slide, please. Just tried to control it myself. So what we're going to cover today, just a bit more detail than what I mentioned before, why you should consider automating or going paperless. This isn't about paperlessness, wholly, but it's about automation, and paperless is almost a byproduct of using these tools. When we started doing it, our objective wasn't to save the environment. Our objective was just to do it better, but it's quite cool that is one of the positive outcomes of using these tools. So we also want to give you an overview of Power Automate and how it works, processes that you can automate, several examples that we use and some that we've created or in some cases plagiarized off others or adapted. Some demos on we're going to do a bit of a demonstration on how to deploy one, just to give you an idea of the level of complexity or easiness for getting one set up, and then some other tools that are kind of in a similar space that we have used that we believe could be beneficial. And just delving a bit more, what we really hope that everyone comes away from here kind of feeling or believing is they understand Power Automate and can explain it to someone, because just like Power BI, it probably took me a year before when people would say, what's Power BI, before I could actually give a proper answer. I knew it was about data and aggregation, but I didn't actually understand it that well. So hopefully Power Automate, you can explain it and understand it well. Take some useful and practical examples away so you can go hopefully to your colleagues or wherever and say, hey, we could implement this. This is what we could to help us with this. So that's what we hope. Be confident that you have the ability to do it, or at least get started, and then start using it would be our ideal takeaways. Okay, so why do this? Why automation and or paperlessness? So obviously there's the environmental side, which is great, of course. The other side of it is thinking more the motivations of pushing your organization forward, improving and accelerating processes, implementing processes easily. So some of these cases we might be talking about, or you might be thinking, how can I adapt this existing process to automation? In some cases, you won't be doing anything, and you might be doing it manually or just verbally, or you don't have a process. And so this could be a way to implement a process you believe could be beneficial easily. allow your organization to function in a lockdown scenario like this, obviously. So it does help with the situation we're in at the moment, and then keeping tight records of all activity. So it's a good way to have consistency around your processes. So just to give you an idea of the type of processes that we see and ourselves have adapted, but are commonly paper-based. So timesheets, although hopefully not in nowadays, especially with what's going on at the moment, it will probably make it very difficult. Purchase requests, expense claims, if your staff are purchasing things and have to claim it back. Credit card requests, maybe there's a company credit card and that's how you process or approve payments there. Health and safety incidents is a common one. Travel requests and new client forms, and a lot on the staff induction side of things can be, very paper-based, maybe even staff contracts. So yeah, these are common ones. You will have more, and sorry, just keep on the slide, Lucy. And yeah, but the idea is these can be potentially transformed and improved. So what is Power Automate? Well, we had a couple of slides on this, and then we thought, well, Microsoft has some videos that are a lot better than we could ever make. So we thought we'd just play a 1.5 minute video to speed things up. Shoot, Lucy.
Yeah, so we'll kick into that to start with, and then we'll have a bit of a deeper dive.
These days, there's a cloud service to do just about anything. Problem is, there's no good way to get your favorite apps to talk to each other, to connect them, and automate the tasks that are so time-consuming. Or is there? With Microsoft Power Automate, whether you start from a template or create your own multi-step flow across several apps, it's simple. Why constantly check email when you can get a text message whenever someone important emails you? Automating that means you can use that time to do other things. And Power Automate can really help get things connected. Say someone tweets about your company. Set up a flow that follows them, sends a nice reply, adds them to a spreadsheet that gets emailed to you for your approval, then adds their contact to Salesforce or Dynamics 365. You can also get and manage approvals using Power Automate on the web, your phone, or even right from your inbox. And this streamlined approval process works with data in SharePoint, Microsoft Dynamics 365, Twitter, MailChimp, and over 100 other services. And with the Power Automate app, you can monitor, manage, and create flows from anywhere. For tasks that need to happen now, like instantly blocking out the next hour in your calendar, we've designed flows that start with the tap of a button. How about that? That's technology talking together, working smarter, so you can work less and do more.
Cool. So it's not the perfect demonstration of what it does, particularly for an organization, but it does accelerate the idea of what it's trying to do by integrating processes and apps. Most of our use of Power Automate is around taking data that traditionally we would use paper-based and maneuvering it through our organization with approvals. But recently we've started to kind of get into the cool sort of personal things that can benefit you personally and productivity, and that can be a cool way to understand how it works as well. So just a few things on Power Automate. It's part of Office 365. It's part of the Power Platform, like Power BI and Power Apps and that kind of thing. But it doesn't need to, you don't need to use those to use this, of course. It's formerly called Microsoft Flow. You may have heard it when it was called that. And it's both for organizations as a whole and for individuals, and kind of that's in tandem. It's low or no code. So it's kind of, in some ways, it's like developing an app, but without having to do any development. And there are many existing templates available to help get you started or even just get you to implement them. So I'm going to put up a poll. There's a couple of polls I was supposed to put up before, but I'm going to put up a few polls over the next couple of slides. So one to start off with will be I'm actually going to go to this poll, which is the takeaways. So I should have put this up when we had the takeaways slide, but anyway, we'll check it up now. What do you hope to take away from this webinar? Just gives us a bit of an idea about where position people are in. Cool. All right, we'll share results there. So know what it is. That's a good start, and that's genuinely legitimate takeaway. And I think one of my webinars I attended from Microsoft is often to understand what it is, so that I can, maybe when something comes up, I know when I can go back and look more into it. Create more efficiency and speed for processes for the long term is obviously the higher one. So thank you for that. And interestingly, I wondered if there were people that were dealing with challenges with lockdown. Given that people might be scanning things and trying to work around it, it seems like there aren't, which is cool. So we don't need to spend too much time on that. Okay, just continuing on. Next slide, Lucy.
Alrighty, so this is, I guess, the basic anatomy of what a flow actually is, which is quite useful. You've probably heard the words that are thrown about a wee bit, but it doesn't really help you understand what it is. This is a wee example of one. So essentially, each of those little boxes represents a step. The first step is what's called the trigger, so that's why this flow has decided to start running. And then everything after that is could be getting more data in, actioning something based on the data from beforehand. This one here's got things like sending out emails, starting approvals, and then you can set conditions as well. So say based on the outcome that someone's picked in that approval process, do this or do this. So we'll go over building a wee bit later on, but that's just when we say a flow, that is what the actual backend itself looks like. And as I touched on, so how does a flow actually start? You've got a few different ways. So you've got triggers. So that could be things like when you receive an email, when a form gets filled out, and forms is a big one that we use, as Connor mentioned. When a document gets uploaded, if you get mentioned in a tweet, there's a whole bunch of things there, 300 something, I think, that can trigger it off. Buttons are another one. So in the little intro video, they showed the mobile app, and that's where you can have buttons that you just tap on them and they start whatever process it is that you've got attached to that. And then also you can schedule them. So you can set processes that run, once every day or once a week at a set time. So you've got a few different ways that you can kick them off.
So we just thought we'd highlight Microsoft Forms. So Microsoft Forms is something you may or may not have used. It comes with Office 365 like Power Automate, and I don't know any plans where Microsoft Forms isn't free, as in Business Essentials or the Enterprise one will have it. So if you have Office 365, you probably have access to Forms. And it's a really easy system to set up Forms. I don't think there's anything easier in Office 365 to set up. And it's often, in many of our examples that we're going to go through, it's the starting point for how you get the data. And this is what we use for our forms. Like at the end of this webinar, there'll be a form that hopefully would ask you to fill out, and they literally take a minute to get ready. So it's a good way to set up a form.
Yeah, and you can use them sort of in one-off situations for things like getting feedback or quizzes, that sort of thing. But what we'll be focusing on in the examples we use is ones that we've got that get used on a sort of daily, weekly basis when set processes need to run as well. So we're going to run through a handful of demos. One of them is going to include a build, and depending on how we go for time, we'll hopefully be able to get through all of them. Most of the ones you see are ones that we've actually got in play with the team at the moment. We've been using Flow for around about 2 years probably. So some of these have been in place for quite a while with us. We wanted to fit quite a good variety in. So, if we do go too fast on any of them, you can ask us questions later on, or we can give you a bit of a deeper dive. So don't worry if we do skip over things a wee bit quickly. But we will kick off. So first one we wanted to run through, Connor, if I miss anything, sing out, is our internal purchases. So this is essentially a process to request approval for purchasing something for internal use. So examples could be if one of the team wants to get an extra headset, or they want to get a new webcam, that sort of thing, that jump into here to fill out one of these. Gets fired through to the nominated person for approval. As you can see in the how does it work, we get all the info we need in a Microsoft form. Approval gets sent through to whoever it is that needs to approve it, and then say it does get approved, that info gets sent through to the accounts team as well, so they've got all the info they need. When an invoice turns up, they know exactly what it was for, and they can tie it to that, which is pretty handy. Saves a lot of queries down the track. What do we used to do, Conan?
Yeah, paper forms usually coming to me, sit on my desk, get lost, and piss people off. That's probably what happened. It did generally happen. I'd get a bit of paper. Sometimes I was away, and then they'd sometimes get lost. And usually the paper would go one way, so it couldn't go to multiple people, which is a challenge. and it's more difficult for me to bounce back or ask for information, and the notification of when it had been approved was usually in person, so it was slow. Of course, we used to scan them and email them round, but it was just a little bit ugly and not as fast and clean, and often the forms weren't filed so well, which meant that there was no real validity of the process, because people could then circumvent them. So often it would be circumvented, yeah. And sometimes, Lucy mentioned the headsets and webcams. Sometimes these were also, big recurring purchases, several $1,000 recurring things that are going to keep coming in, and so you want to have a track of them. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we'll kick into a demo. Now this is going to run through, rather than the actual backend and Power Automate, you're going to see how the users involved actually interact with the flow. So you'll see what actually happens from their side, and we'll see what happens with the magic. So I'll start and stop with this a wee bit as we go on, just to show you what's happening. But we'll kick it off. So this is our SharePoint site. So this is our hub site. This is where we've got all of our forms that the team can jump in and access. So we're going to want to go through to our People Hub, which is where you link to all of our forms. You can see all of everyone's beautiful faces. So you get a wee welcome to the IT team, and then whoever's filling this out, they've got a few different places they can go, but you'll see there on the right, there's View Our Company Forms. So we're going to jump in and click on this wee bit here just to get to where all of these are kept. Now, like I said, we do use this a lot, so we've got quite a few options there. The one that we're going to be looking at today is this placing an order for an internal purchase. But as you can see, we use them for health and safety. We use them for a few other different sort of purchasing scenarios. Here we go. So in this particular example, we're filling out a wee purchase order request. Need to use the credit card. For this one, we want to get some coffee beans from Countdown, because we have run out of coffee beans, and that is a priority one situation sometimes in the office. So this person obviously wants to pop down and go ahead and buy these themselves. So these forms, like Conan said, they're super easy to set up. You can make them conditional. They're pretty smart, but to get yourself started, it will take literally 5 minutes to whip one of these up. At the bottom here, you'll see it's got picked, who do you need to approve this request? For this particular form, it's always me unless I'm not here. So we'll just pick me there. And
you could also get, sorry Lucy, you could also get quite intelligent about, whoever has actually clicked this link, it can know who they are. And these forms actually know you don't have to enter your name, and it could automatically determine where it goes based on departments. There's a lot of things you could do there if you really want to.
And one of our demos at the end does actually pull that in as well. On the back end, there's quite a lot of smarts that you can set up. This is easier for us just because it means that we can toggle quite quickly. But if you do have set people that always need to do certain things, that can definitely be a good way to do it. But yeah, we'll go ahead and click submit on that. I think we've got everything in there that we need. And once we have clicked submit, we'll see what happens. That'll get fired off for approval. So this is all that the person who's filling out that information needs to do. Done. Response was submitted. So now we're going to jump in and be me for a wee bit. So this is my email. It's nice and messy, and you'll see I've just gotten one email to start with. So this here is because I was the person that submitted the form. We set it up so I get a wee email notification just to say, hey, you sent this through. This is everything you said, and it just means I've got a record of the fact that I did actually submit that as well. So if I'm sort of second guessing myself the next day, did I actually send that? I can always refer back here, which is quite handy. Now, the next one that is popping up there from Microsoft Flow is for the approver, exactly. I'm kind of circumventing the system a wee bit here because I'm approving my own request. But normally this would be going to someone different. So few really key things to have a look at here. This email is interactive, which is awesome. You don't need to leave the system in order to go ahead and do the approval or rejection. So I'll just pause it there so we don't get too far ahead. Anatomy of this email, you've got who it is that sent the request through. You've got all the details of what it is that they want. And then you've got a couple of options. You can approve it straight in there, or you can reject it in there. Now, if you're on your mobile app, you're going to get a little notification like that introduction video showed you, and you can do all of this within there as well. So if you're out and about, it's super easy just to do it as well, even if you don't have access to your emails. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and reject this to myself. We've already got some coffee beans on order, so.
And we're not in the office.
And we're not in the office, that's true. I'm not buying myself coffee for my home.
We don't actually get people to fill in forms to order coffee beans, by the way, just for people listening. and that was where it led.
There you go. So we've been able to click submit on that, which is pretty cool. Like I said, you can now refer back to this email as the person has approved it or rejected it. You know what you've done. So the email itself has adapted itself to show exactly what's happened. Yeah. And for people like Conan who can't remember if they did or didn't do something, they can refer back to the email.
Approvals several times, not realizing that I'd already approved it just because.
Whereas this won't let you do that, which is quite useful. Also, if we'd approved it in the app, it would have updated this email too. Right. So as the requester for that, I've gotten a pretty sad email. It says it's been declined. So the good thing is there, it's pulled in those comments that I filled out in the previous thing. So I know exactly why it's been declined, and I can go, yeah, okay, that's probably fair enough. Probably didn't actually need to do it, but it's a really simple one.
Yep. Obviously, if it was accepted, it could go to the accounts team, and you can do things like purchase order numbers if you want to.
Exactly.
But yeah, it can go to multiple places, email to systems that you have. Yeah, there's lots of options there.
Yeah, and for that sort of basic structure, we use that for tons of different things. So internal purchases is one, credit card approvals, credit approvals, anything where you need to get some information, have it approved, and then just have that confirmed through to someone else. So really basic stuff. They don't take long to set up, and they've replaced a bunch of forms that we just used to write on paper.
It's also, we showed it coming through in SharePoint, but we also have these in Teams, so people can select which way they access these forms. Some people will have them shortcutted in their browser, of course, as well, if they use them a lot.
Yeah. So we've been using these for around about 18 months. And we did some calculations the other day. We were sort of doing a wee updated blog post on our journey with this. And we realized we've saved about 240 hours, which is, I don't know, astounding is probably the right word to use. Works out to be about 6 weeks of actual work. So they do save time, and they mean that people will actually use the forms as well, which is actually just as important. People will follow the process, you get everything you need, and it tracks it.
Yeah.
All right, so that's one pretty simple one. Now we're going to jump into so important notifications. So this is for things like health and safety alerts, which is what the demo we're going to be using is for. So if there's an incident, a near miss, or someone might be about to do some potentially hazardous sort of work on site that they need to get checked, that's the sort of thing that needs to get through to the team really quickly so that they can check what's going on and take any action if it's needed quickly. So how does it work? Again, we're going with a Microsoft form because it's a good way for us to get the information, and people just need to go to the one place. And then the Health and Safety Committee is going to get notified directly within Teams. So rather than an email going through, they're all going to get a wee pop-up alert, which just makes sure that they get alerted immediately. So what did we used to do here? Bit of a mixture of things. Sometimes people would email about the stuff. Sometimes people would do a phone call to somebody. Sometimes there'd be a paper form, but there would never be sort of a central record of all of this sort of things going on. You'd never know if the information had gotten to the person quickly, and items just weren't consistently being reported because people weren't too sure quite what they're supposed to do.
Yeah. So nothing is kind of one of the answers as well.
Nothing is one of the answers.
Yeah.
So we'll do a quick demo. Again, we're going to be the end user here. We'll show you the form, and we'll show you this getting notified into Teams. So we will jump in here. So this is another one of our beautiful SharePoint sites. This is the Health and Safety Hub. And you'll see when we come here, we've got a few different places, a few different forms that we could fill out. So the one we're going to do today is this completing an on-site work form. So we'll just click play on that. We'll click through there, and that's going to open up the wee form. Again, this is another one of those forms that's pretty quick to set up. This one's got quite a lot of conditional sort of answers and things in it. So the very first question, what area does this work relate to? Depending on what they pick there, they're going to get a bunch of different options that they can pick from. Again, it just means that you're only getting the information you need to know based on what it is that they're actually going to be doing. This person's going to be doing some work at heights. They've gone through and made sure they've ticked everything else there, and they're making sure that they're going to be following all of the right requirements while they're on site. So they're going to go ahead and submit that, and then we're going to fire our way into Teams. Here we go. So our Health and Safety Committee, they've got a wee team you can see here on the left, so Health Safety Wellness Committee, and they've got a channel dedicated to these notifications. So this is their on-site work notifications. This little pop-up here is what has happened when that form gets submitted. So Lucy's done an on-site work checklist. You need to review the details and just get in touch with them, make sure if anything does need to happen, we can go ahead and do that. What is neat here as well is that if, depending on who does jump on this, whoever's at their desk and sees that alert come through, they can just click reply onto that and let the team know that they're working on it. So the other bit of smarts on the back end of this in Power Automate is that all of the data submitted in that form makes its way through to Excel as well. So for this one here, we've got it all in the one Teams channel just so people don't have to go anywhere else. You see that form that I submitted through there has been entered in there. Got some beautiful conditional formatting thanks to my Excel wizardry, which just highlights any problems that do need addressing as well. So a bit of a combination of getting some Power Automate in there to get all the information in, and then you can do a wee bit more to make it look a bit nicer if you need to as well. So yeah, this one's a big one for just making sure we're getting on to those sorts of alerts really quickly.
Yep. I'd imagine some organisations will have dedicated health and safety apps that they use, and this is likely not going to be at that level, but if you don't have anything, if you're currently operating with a paper form, maybe an incident form, and that is it, this could be a way to get something that's a little bit more, I guess, professional and consistent.
And it's kind of mentioned at the start as well, those forms can be accessible through your Teams app, which means that they're always on your phone. If you've got Teams installed on your phone, you can access them from wherever you are. So for our on-site guys in particular, who are probably the more likely ones to come into incidents and hazards, to be fair, it means that they have no excuse not to just let us know at the time when that sort of thing's happening, which is brilliant. So we use them for health and safety notifications, and we use a pretty similar workflow as well for if there's security incidents or breaches. So the team fill out a wee form just to let us know what they've worked on, upload any logs of anything that's happened, and then our security team gets a wee notification as well so they can do any follow-up if it's required. That's IT security incidents, not people breaking and entering into the building. All right, so the next one we're going to do is the time off request, and this is going to actually also just give you an overview of the actual back end instead of the user side. So what are we wanting to achieve with this one? We're wanting to send a request through to our manager for some annual leave. So how does this one work? Starts with a form, as all good things do. The person's manager, so the Power Automate's going to figure out who the manager is. They're going to get notified via an approval, so email and mobile app. And then if the leave does actually get approved, the person who requested it, their calendar is going to get updated. It's going to set them as out of office on those days. So it's pretty smart. What did we used to do here? Paper forms, same thing. Not always clear who they needed to go to as well. Does Connor need to approve everyone's leave? Do you send it to someone else? If he's not there, what happens? And people were pretty bad at filling out their calendars. Would that be fair?
Yeah, terrible. Terrible. To the point where if someone it's easy when someone says I'll take a week off in 2 weeks, but when someone puts in a form for or a request that's a year out for a week, it's very easy to get a day before they're going on leave, and then you realise they're on leave. The other thing is obviously a shared calendar can be quite good for leave, and even having some sort of trigger where they need to let everyone know and maybe do a bit of preparation for their leave. We have handovers and that kind of thing can be things you can put in place as well with this. So it just automates it.
Yeah, and you could set it up to fill out their out of office, all those sorts of things as well. We've gone for a pretty basic one, but there's no end to the automation you could do here. All right, so we are going to have a look at the actual build for this one. So what do we want to do? We want to get the info on a form, send it to your manager for approval, and then update your calendar. If your leave isn't approved, we're going to have to decline it. So what we'll do is we'll kick into how this looks. So here is the beautiful form that we've gone ahead and whipped up. So this is your annual leave request. You'll see it just needs 3 things. So it needs to know when you're on leave and why you're on leave if you want to. It's not a required form. And then the form itself, again, it picks up who you are and when you're requesting it. So if you do need to use that information, you can. Right now, apologies, this video looks awful to start with, but we will kick into it. So first thing I'd recommend you do is always look and see if there's a template that's going to do what you need to do. So for this one here, we've searched for leave approval, and there is one for requesting manager leave. Excellent. So we're going to jump in and see if that looks like it'll do what we want. So just pause. Go back and pop that one back through. All right. So if we just pause there, so what's this going to do? It is going to add an item to a SharePoint list and send a request to your manager for approval. So it's doing most of what we want, but we just want it to start slightly differently. So we don't want it to start from SharePoint, we want it to start from Forms. So what we've done is we've gone ahead, we've grabbed this, all we've done is we've changed the first input and then we've whipped up a flow from that. So click play, we'll whack over to this tab and you can have a look at how it looks. So there are 6 wee steps to this here. So the first one, when a new response is submitted. So this is getting the response from that annual leave form. I'm just going to make sure you pick the right one there, and then it's getting all of the details that you've input into there. So this get response details step just means that all of the inputs that have happened into that form, you can then use further down the track, and we're going to want to know when they've requested the leave for and who's requested the leave. So we need to get that information there. Get my profile, that's going to get all of the details of that person who submitted the form. And this next step is going to show why we've done that. So, like Conan mentioned, you're not always going to be picking from a drop down as to who you want to approve things or action things. Sometimes you're going to want the system to figure that out for yourself. So if you are an organization that's got a structure set up within Office 365, you can actually set these forms up to automatically send to whoever your manager is designated as. So this step here, it's using the email address of the person that submitted the form to figure out who their manager is. So this little box that has flicked out on the right-hand side here called dynamic content, that is all of the information that you've collected in those previous steps that you can use. So there you go, we've gone for the mail one in this case. And now we're going to start an approval. So the actual process of doing an approval is a built-in thing to this, which is really neat. If you say you want to do an approval, the system knows exactly what you mean. So we'll roll over what this one looks like. So we've set it up with the title, pretty simple, please approve this. It's assigned to, and that's the email address of the manager. So it's pulled it out of the set of data that you've collected. And then we've made the email look quite nice. So it's automatically picked up the name of the person who is submitted the form. They'd like you to approve some leave. We've pulled out the data from the actual form, the start date and the end date, and the reason. So I'm going to go ahead and show you a wee bit more about this dynamic content thing as well. So what you'll do when we scroll down, you get to see all those fields from the form that we filled in right at the start.
I just realised something, Lucy. Sorry to interrupt, but the birthday thing might come in handy actually, just to make because it could be better. I could be better at remembering my colleagues' birthdays, so I might get a wee.
You wanted to set up a flow to give you a day's heads up.
Make me appear to be a better boss, I guess. Anyway, keep going.
That is something you could do. There you go. It gets all of that information. So yeah, this section here, so the get response details, that has everything that we just we got on the form there as well. So that's why we do that get response details step right at the start. It means that we can use all of those fields later on down the track. So got our reason for leave and our start date of leave. Like I said, it also grabs the email and the submission time as well, which sometimes can be handy. All right. All we need to do next is let the system know what we want to happen, depending on whether it's approved or not approved. So if it's not approved, unfortunately, the person who's requested that leave is going to get a little rejection email. Like I said, this is all built into that original template. So as long as you pick that, this will all be formatted for you. It pulls that information out of the start and approval dynamic content. So you can automatically include who it was that did the rejection and what their comments were. So they might say, 2 other people are already on leave, that sort of thing. Alternatively, if your leave's been approved, there you go. We've got a nice little email saying, hey, they've gone ahead and approved it. Again, if they've got any comments, they can pop them in there. And then just a reminder of the dates that you requested. Now, this next wee step is just sort of an extra thing tacked onto the end there for blocking out your calendar. So this is a nice to have, and as Connor mentioned, you could do a few other things from here. You could set a scheduled reminder to remind you 2 weeks beforehand to tell your team, or 2 days beforehand to set you out of office, that sort of thing.
You could set it to automatically set you out of office.
You could set it to automatically set you out of office. Yeah, so all you need to do in this here is you just need to make sure it knows which calendar you're wanting to update. If you've got access to other people's calendars, they'll show up in that list. And you probably don't want to book your leave in there. You want to book it as annual leave. There is a wee bit of formula work in here just to make sure you get in the right days. And that's just running a formula to get the start of the day of the start date of your leave that you've requested in there. So you're just going to pop that into there. And then with the end time, again, because you want it to go the entire way to the end of your leave, and there isn't an end of day formula, unfortunately, you want to get the start of the day, and you're going to use a little formula called add days just to make sure it's looking at the day after the end of your leave, getting the start of that day. Like I say, this one's slightly more complicated than just the straight point and click, but once you've done it a couple of times, you get the hang of it. So there you go, you just get your end date of your leave. And then there are a couple of other things to do. Make sure you've got the right time zone for the leave. So make sure you got that booked as New Zealand. And then, is it an all-day event? Yes, because you are going to be off for the whole time. And then how do you want your status to show? So just making sure you set that as out of office. And that'll make sure that that's automatically picked up, particularly in things like Teams and the likes as well. So it's pretty smart like that. So that's the anatomy of that thing. It all sort of packages itself up really nicely into this beautiful little 6-step thing. But as you can see, you can get really complicated with it as well. So
yeah,
this
was probably one of the, if you wanted to build this yourself and make the changes that we didn't make, this is probably on the advanced side. So there are far easier ones you could do that you don't need to make any changes for. So if this looked like you're like, oh, this is getting this is probably on the not super advanced, because you can sort of bust out the code, but this is, we wanted to show you a proper one with quite a bit of functionality.
Yeah, and the good thing about this one is, like I said, you can start it from that template as well. So, I mean, if you were just using a SharePoint list, you'd have to do very little because we wanted to go from a form, because that's how we like our team to sort of interact with all the things and they know what they're doing. We just get to do that. So it's a pretty good one.
Cool. Thanks, Lucy.
All right. So a couple more slightly more interesting, sort of fun, not just data gathering ones. So this one here is our daily stand-up overview, and I see we're running quite short on time, so I'll be a speedster through these. So this is solving a problem where we don't necessarily know how busy our engineers are. So we want to get a wee bit of info on how their day's looking, and we've got 2 neat ways we can do this. We can use a Power App, and we can use a little Teams bot to chat with them. This all gets fired through in the end to a spreadsheet, and we can see a wee daily report. So we'll have a quick peek at the Power App to start with. So again, Power Apps, if you haven't looked at the Power App suite yet, they're like drag and drop app building. They're actually pretty easy to do. And you can use them as sort of a way to collect data. So in this one, cool, I want to go ahead. We just need 3 simple bits of information. How busy are you for project work? How busy are you with BAU work, so standard support and things? And do you have anything you need to tell the team about your availability? So all we'll do is go through, fill that out, click submit, and then that'll fire that information off to Power Automate to work its magic with.
So this was done because every time we had a stand up and the engineers are quite busy, we asked these questions. And because the engineers are engineers, they would give sort of not straight answers. So this was a good way to get straight answers because they have to pick.
Exactly. It kind of prompts them to actually think about it a wee bit more, which is really handy for us.
And this was a lockdown initiative that we did because we were just finding we needed to have more stand-ups, and then we needed to try and make them a bit faster, more efficient.
Exactly. So we'll just click submit on that, and that'll fire that information away. Now, like I said, there is another way that we get that info too. So I'll show you that, and then I'll show you what it all spits out like. So this is going to be a wee adaptive card. So you can set these to run up on a schedule. So for something like stand up, you might say at 7:30 every morning, pop this little stand up card up on everybody's teams, and they'll be able to jump in there.
So that's just for the engineers, Lucy, is it?
Yep, so just for the engineers. You can set it to go to specific people. This one's only set up to go to me at the moment, just for demos. And they can fill out exactly the same information there as well. So this is called an adaptive card because you can interact with it. Microsoft's got a website where you can just build them yourself, sort of drag and drop again, and it spits out the code for you. So they're pretty handy.
So if you're using Teams, this might be really appealing. If you're not, you might go, why am I looking at this? But
if you're using Teams, you're going to go, fantastic. They don't need to leave Teams to be able to give me this information, which is real handy.
Right. Yeah, but you don't have to use Teams. You could do it via email. You could do it via other things, of course. Yeah.
You could do it with a form as well. It was just, I think, for this sort of thing, because they're going to be doing it every day, we want to make sure it's really easy and built into what the systems they're already working with. Right. And there you go. That's the output of that. So it fires it through to a form or to a spreadsheet. This automatically, there you go. You'll see that row 10 is me, the one we just filled out. So I've got some project work. It figures out that I've checked in for the day. AJ and Igor have not yet checked in. So if I was managing that team, I'd go and figure out what on earth they were doing because it's 10 a.m. and they probably should have started work by now. And we can get smart around seeing who's marked themselves as a 1 and who's marked themselves as a 5 for busyness and sort of buddy those people up to help share the load a wee bit.
Yeah. So it might be, depending on, I'm sometimes seeing these videos on this presentation a little bit blocky, but hopefully you can understand what's going on. Sorry about that if that's the case. I think Zoom,
good. Like I said, we can do
going a bit crazy.
We can do deeper dives offline for anyone who wants a wee bit more information.
Cool. Nice.
Okay, now I think the last one we'll do a wee demo of, we might skip the button ones, is this document approval. So this is one we've actually had a few questions about. So obviously this is quite common in organizations that you need to get someone to sign off a document before it gets either maybe shared more widely or sent out to board. So things like board documents, sales proposals, quotes, that sort of thing, maybe contracts. It's really easy to get a basic one of these set up. So it's built straight into SharePoint. If you're using SharePoint, this is the easiest way to do it. Specified item gets sent for approval, and then there's a little sign-off status where you can see exactly what's happening with it. So we'll jump into SharePoint and have a quick peek at this. We'll set it up at the same time as we use it. So here we go. So we are being Megan today, and she wants to request sign-off for this thing. Now that little automate drop-down, you'll have that already in your system. What you might not have is the sign-off status column. The very first time you click this request sign off button, it's going to add that in there for you. So don't panic if you don't see it straight away. Right, so I'm just going to pop up and say, hey, you don't actually have this flow up and running yet, but we can make it. Let's just double check it's what we want. Cool, so it lets you send an item to someone to get it approved. That is exactly what we want. So we're just going to click create. And then we will fill out what it wants. So run flow. All you need to do, type in who you want to approve it. Now, the demo accounts we're using at the moment, Miriam is Megan's manager, so we're going to get her to sign that off. And we're just going to flicker a wee message with that as well, saying, hey, can you take a look at this and sign this off for me? And then we will click run, and that's going to start off that approval process. Now, you're all pretty familiar with that now. So Miriam on the other end, she's going to get a wee pop-up on her phone if she's got the app installed, and she's also going to get an email that she can go through. She can approve, decline. The only difference is that she's also going to have a link to that document, so she doesn't need to go hunting for it. It's going to automatically direct her to it. She can open it up, have a look. She can make any changes before she decides to approve or decline it, and that's pretty neat. So what we'll do, we'll jump into Miriam's emails. There we go. So you'll see at the top there, she's got this little email saying, please approve. So if we click into that, you'll see, there we go. So one of those approval emails, and like I say, it's got the wee link there that'll send you straight through to the document. So she can open that up. She can have a look through it. So in this case, it's a marketing campaign. So she might want to flick through the different slides, make sure she's pretty happy with all the content in there. And once she's happy with it, all she needs to do is go back to that email and click yay or nay, and she can add a little bit of information in there if she wants to as well. So if you wanted to make any changes to the document, this is when you do it. What I'll do is I'll just skip forwards to the email. There we go. So she's going to approve that. Go for it. And again, she's just doing this all within the email system, which is really handy. Don't need to go anywhere else. And submit. The neat thing about this flow is that you can pick who it sends to each time. So, you might have different people. There we go. That sign off status is currently pending, and boom, it's been flicked to approve. So that all happens automatically. And you'll see up on the top right-hand corner here, there's a little notification alert. That's because Megan's also been sent an email to say, hey, this has been approved. Go for it. So it's pretty neat like that. That's a really quick one for you to set up pretty much straight away. If you want to go ahead and get document approvals in your organization, it will take you all of about 2 minutes. So I challenge you, if you're interested in doing it, go ahead and get that in place. All right, so buttons. Conan, are you happy if I just talk about buttons maybe rather than do a demo?
I reckon, do you have any demos after this?
Any demos after this?
Is this the last one? If you do,
Buttons is the last one.
just go for it.
Yeah, all right, cool. So buttons are part of the mobile app. So you click them to start a flow, and they're mainly focused on the personal productivity side of things. So rather than, setting and putting in place grand new processes for your organization, these are kind of the more people focused ones. So let's have a look at this. So making a really simple button, you'll jump into your flow app. This is what it looks like. You can see all of the flows that you've got up and running. And for this one here, we want to make one. So where are we? We're going to make a wee button app. And the one we want to do today is clicking a button to email a note. So what that's going to do, there you go, click a button to send a note by email. So if you're out and about, you might use this template to send yourself sort of a reminder, do XYZ when you get back to your desk. And there's very little customization. So you can see in here the triggers, the trigger is a flow, the button is the trigger, sorry, and you just need to enter the email subject, email body, and it's going to send that email out for you. Easy as. So we're not changing anything here. We're just having a look at what the flow has set up. And then we're just going to click create.
So this is for setting it up for the first time.
Exactly.
You need to do it every time, otherwise you're just sending yourself an email.
Exactly. So once you got this up and running, it just means, yeah, in future you can just jump about and do that. But in saying that, again, it took about 20 seconds to get that set up probably.
Yep.
And now it's showing up in your buttons. So we'll click on that, click a button to make a note, enter the subject, enter the body, click done, and you're away laughing. When you get back to your desk, you'll have your email sitting there, and you're good to go. There are other ones that you can do with that. So things like, what else do you do? Set up to send yourself the weather every day. I think there's ones that you can set up to see if your email address has been hacked. Conan, I think you had that one up and running.
Yeah, it's a bit weird though. Yeah.
But yeah, so like
hacked. No, just kidding.
Like I say, they're pretty simple. You can do slightly more advanced ones, so I won't show the video of this one, but you can do things like blocking out your calendar. So I think in the very first video they mentioned blocking out your calendar for an hour. That's cool. You tap on that one when you're out and about and you've gotten held up, and it'll just block that. You can set things up that are a bit more complicated. So one that we've got up and running, figure out what gaps you've got in your calendar tomorrow and block them. So say you've got a pretty busy day coming up and you're worried that people are going to keep booking you in for meetings, you might want to jump in and block out all available gaps. So
nowadays a gap in your calendar means
you're free.
An invitation for people to give you a meeting as opposed to allowing you to do some proper work. So this is a way to kind of, stop that if you think it's getting out of hand, or you could potentially change that to for the week, which I like. So yeah.
Exactly. Those ones require a wee bit more setup, but they're pretty useful things, and that's sort of an example of, I guess, a personal productivity version of this rather than an organization-wide one.
So we'll talk about this very briefly. Similar to our engineer stand-up form that we showed before, the flow, or the Power Automate. This one is one that Microsoft's released around the COVID. It has the stand-ups as well as a bunch of other things that can be very cool. So it's kind of like a pre-built automation flow plus little intranet site. Feel free, I'd search for crisis management app if you wish to have a look at that, and there's some videos and cool stuff in there. Oh, I just tried to move next slide. Try Lucy. Other things you can do, keep track of social media updates. And what we mean by that is your own organizational social media update. So, one of the things that you'll see if you jump into the app is, automating, adding a Twitter follower to your newsletter system. However it does that, I'm not sure, but there's things like that. Team quiz scoring, we do that. Induction processes are a big one, and CRM integrations of using Dynamics 365, there's a ton, and Salesforce, and there's a lot in there. So you can automate, if someone signs up to a newsletter somewhere, you could automate getting them in the CRM. There's lots of things like that you could do.
Yeah, I guess the important thing to be aware of is all of the demos we've used are sort of sticking within the Microsoft suite, but you can pull in data from other places and set off actions in other areas as well. So that's really, really useful to know as well.
Pandadocs, this is just us showing some of the other things outside of the Power Automate that could assist you with paperless and improving process. We use a system called Pandadocs, so a lot of the people on this, a lot of the attendees will have been a recipient of some of our documents. So we use it for big and small proposals, short and long quotes. Allows us to track activity, if people have opened them, if people, whether they haven't seen them, because that does happen, and obviously if they've signed off, and then it obtains a sign off, which is handy. Just a bit of an example of the type. You can have employee contracts, which we have quite a few employee related. We do contracts paper-based at the moment, but we will be changing that soon. But everything else, people inputting their information and personal information for our induction is handled in Pandox, and it's actually really handy. Office Lens is another one. This is kind of if you're struggling with the paperless Nest, perhaps in COVID, in the situation with lockdown, it could help. It's basically using your phone as a scanner, but it's an Office 365 product. Really feature rich, and it actually captures the text quite well rather than just taking a photo. Yeah, so this is kind of an example of what it does, and you can edit it. It works surprisingly well. It's free. If you're on iPhone or Apple or Android, the app's there, and you can sign into Office 365 to integrate it to other things as well. So just as we wrap, where to from here, we'd suggest you start thinking about your processes that could be automated. This is things you have already, or potentially things you should automate. You might be thinking, we're a 5-person team, we don't need this, but the downside of having a faster, more well-documented process, well, is there a downside to having that that can be set up if you don't have to pay additional money to get it? That kind of thing could be really beneficial. So we do suggest you consider this. Sometimes getting the staff to do it can be a little bit of an interesting thing, and we found that there was a little bit of people, they went back to the old forms, maybe myself even, for a while, and then just over time they get accustomed to the speed of using the new system, and then you get rid of the old forms. Or what we did with some of our purchases, so the purchase request was a big one. We basically said, if you want to purchase something, you have to do it over here. Don't ask for the credit card. Don't ask if you want a headset or whatever it is. You have to go through this process, and that will be an effective way to get it started. Health and safety, we keep the paper option there, but I'm not sure if we do anymore, but the idea is kind of to have it as an option, and then as people become more confident they've used it, they will start to use the system properly. Get started yourself, see how you get on, find some templates and try and get one of them going. If you struggle and would like some help, then that's something we could do. Download the mobile app for a bit of a play. What you'll find is you'll look through it, you'll be like, oh, some of the stuff is cool. You might play with it for a little bit. You might find something that's actually practical. And read our blog on Power Automate. It's got a bit more detail about our journey than this other things we've covered in this presentation. And go to flow.microsoft.com, has a bit more detail than the app. The app's kind of a lot, you can see it's geared for the sort of personal productivity stuff, but obviously approvals are part of the app as well. So yeah, next slide. Some common questions. So I'll just answer these very quickly as I'm aware of the time. How to get started? Well, we'd suggest, as I said before, pick something simple. Maybe dabble with a form first. Maybe it's not something that's going to cause a lot of upheaval. Maybe it is purchase approvals is not a bad one. Maybe time off, perhaps, and start with it and see if you can get that embedded, and then start to look if you can do more. Which licenses are required for Power Automate? It's a little bit of an unusual answer, but Power Automate is free, but there is, depending on your license, it will allow you to have number of instances and number of runs. What we've found is that if you are using it extensively, there is a chance that there will be a additional financial component, but you'd have to be using it a lot, and you'd have to be on a lower version of the license. If you're on the enterprise licenses, I believe it's effectively unlimited, but I'm not 100% sure on this. It's quite hard to get a good answer. It is free to start, let's just say. Can you get a hold of the example templates? We'd be very happy to pass them on. I'm not sure how we do that, Lucy, but we would be happy to. Do you need it? Does you need Office 365? That's good writing from me. Do you need Office 365? No, but you probably, it's going to be more difficult for you to integrate. And so we'd suggest if you don't have Office 365 and you like this, you might want to consider it. If you don't have paper processes, is this valuable? We would say yes. Processes are valuable. I think organizations and people could agree to that. This is maybe a shortcut. If you don't have the paper processes, just go straight to the digital. We're aware that some people have systems that do elements of these, and so you might not want to take, not want to take your health and safety system out and put it in here, or your timesheet out. Doesn't mean that other areas couldn't be used, because it is so simple. Are we too small? We don't believe so. Unless you're a one person who just approves your own stuff, maybe you would be too small. Do I need to be a developer or techie to do this? No, but it might help you go a bit further with complex stuff and have a bit more fun. That's just some of the questions you might have more. Question time. Okay, we'll do sort of 3 or 4 minutes on this, and then we'll wrap up, and then we'll answer any that you've sent through afterwards. Lucy, you might be able to, I'll have to pass some of these to you. So is there a way to download a flow for when auditors come to understand how a company follows their policies and procedures? That's from Lloyd.
You can, I mean, you can sort of export the flows, but that would more be for if you're wanting to share them with other people. An actual, I guess, visual share of how the flow process works is probably something that you'd sort of work on with screenshots or running them through it in the actual live system.
Yeah, with that example we showed, you can easily output that, but it probably doesn't have enough detail, but then you could extract it a bit more. Yeah. Next one from Jamie, can I create and give ownership to another user? Create a flow and give ownership to another user.
Yes, you can. So if you've built up a bunch of excellent ones yourself, you can easily share them and turn them into what's called team flows so that more people can use them.
Cool. Next one from Gordon. When applying for leave, how can we track how much time has been taken to date? i.e., have you used your time so you'll be rejected?
I presume you probably could if you had all of your balances and things maybe in a spreadsheet somewhere would be the first thing that came to mind. You could set up some smart so that it checked in there first and did maths and stuff for you.
Just make sure the integrity of that data.
Yeah.
Like if you had a weekly, when you did your payroll, you exported it to a location and then pulled that data, and that would work. But you just have to make sure that it gets up to date. Otherwise, people might, be trying to take leave on old data. So yeah. Next one from Gordon as well. Can a trigger be call received on a phone?
Not 100% sure, probably, but you can send messages with, you can send text and things. That was one of the examples in the video. So I assume you probably can also from a phone call, but have to double check on that.
Excellent. And I'll just go back to one of the other ones that I attempted to answer. Is Power Automate and Microsoft Forms open to external users? My answer was, and correct me if this is yes, but depending on the situation, like Forms is definitely available for external users. I do quizzes, like pub quizzes type things with the family on Fridays, and that's a Microsoft Form thing. And it was the first time I had done it, like at the beginning of lockdown, and it's gone quite well. So it is designed to be internal and external. Power Automate, Lucy, available to external users? I assume elements of.
Elements of it, external users would be able to kick off some of the triggers. So for example, filling out a form, that sort of thing, firing you the email, but actually interacting with the back end of Power Automate, I don't think that would be.
Yeah, not interacting with the back end. I'd imagine if you had a form where, let's say, a health and safety incident or something like that, you could set it up so that if they were a known user, it would pull their Active Directory details, but if they weren't, they would have to fill in their name, etc. I'd imagine that could be a way to do it.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, that's all we have. If you have any other questions, please let us know. Obviously, webinar at theitteam.co.nz for additional webinar at theitteam.co.nz for any questions, or email us, email anyone at the IT team really, and we'd like to get an answer eventually. Please fill out, hopefully when you leave or when we exit this thing, you will be asked for a form. We'd really appreciate you fill it out. It's about 5 questions, shouldn't take you too long. It just helps us to do better at these and be as informative and helpful to you as we can. So thank you very much for attending, and we hope to see you again. Thanks a lot.
Awesome.
Have a nice,
thank you,
have a nice long weekend.